The explosion tore through the diplomatic hall 3 seconds before anyone could react. Lieutenant Jake Morrison hit the marble floor as debris rained down from the ornate ceiling. His ears rang from the blast, but training kicked in faster than thought. He rolled to his feet, scanning for threats through the smoke and chaos. The Velkari delegation was already moving toward their protected corridor, their insectoid bodies flowing with inhuman grace. But something was wrong. Jake spotted it immediately. A small figure, no more than knee-high, stumbled near the blast crater. The child wore the ceremonial wrappings of Velkari royalty, its translucent wings singed and trembling. Every instinct screamed at Jake to follow his team toward the emergency exit. The building was compromised. Secondary explosions were likely. The Velkari were enemies, had been enemies for 12 years of brutal war across 4 star systems. Command would expect him to prioritize human lives. The ceiling groaned above the child. Jake sprinted forward without thinking. He scooped up the small Velkari as the support beam gave way, diving behind a stone pillar as tons of rubble crashed down where they had been standing. The child shrieked in his arms, a sound like breaking glass that pierced through the ringing in his ears. He looked down at what he had saved. 6 compound eyes stared up at him with unmistakable terror. The child's mandibles clicked frantically, probably calling for its mother. Jake had killed Velkari soldiers. He had seen what their plasma weapons did to human bodies. He had lost friends to their raiding parties on the colony worlds. But this was just a kid. The child's breathing was too fast, shallow. Shock, maybe, or whatever passed for it in Velkari physiology. Jake shifted his grip carefully, trying to remember the basic xenobiology briefings they had all ignored. Do not touch the wing membranes. Do not cover the breathing spiracles on the thorax. He cradled the child against his chest, using his body as a shield. More explosions rocked the building. Plasma fire lit up the smoke ahead. This was not just an accident. Someone had attacked the peace talks deliberately. Jake's comm unit crackled to life. Captain Rodriguez was shouting evacuation orders, demanding status reports. Jake opened his mouth to respond, then felt the child's small claws grip his uniform jacket. It had stopped shrieking. Those alien eyes watched him with something that might have been trust. He made his choice. Jake turned away from the human evacuation route and ran deeper into the Velkari section of the compound. If he was going to get this kid to safety, he needed to find its people, even if those people would probably kill him on sight, even if this was the stupidest tactical decision of his career. The child clicked softly against his chest, almost like a purr. Jake ran faster. The Velkari corridor stretched before Jake like a nightmare made of chitin and bioluminescent fungus. Emergency lighting pulsed in wavelengths that hurt his eyes, probably optimized for compound vision. He heard chittering voices ahead, high and urgent. Combat sounds echoed from behind. The child in his arms clicked again, louder this time, almost like it was calling out. Jake felt his stomach drop. If the Velkari guards heard that sound and came around the corner shooting, he was dead. But the kid was trying to help, trying to signal its people. He could not fault it for that. 3 Velkari soldiers rounded the corner in formation, plasma rifles raised. Jake threw himself against the wall, raising one hand in a gesture he hoped translated to surrender. His other arm stayed locked around the child, keeping it secure. The lead soldier froze. Its antennae swept forward, focusing on the small bundle in Jake's arms. The rifle did not lower, but it did not fire either. The soldier's mandibles moved rapidly, speaking in the clicking language Jake had never bothered to learn. The child responded, its voice high and frightened. One of the other soldiers moved forward slowly. Female, Jake guessed from the brighter carapace patterns. She extended her upper limbs toward the child, and Jake felt every muscle in his body tense. This was the moment. He could hand over the kid and hope they let him go, or he could try to run and definitely get shot in the back. The child reached toward the female soldier, clearly recognizing her. A caretaker, maybe. Family. Jake carefully transferred the small Valkyrie into those alien arms, watching as the soldier curled her limbs protectively around the child. The inspection was thorough but gentle, checking for injuries, Jake realized, making sure the kid was okay. When the soldier looked back at Jake, her compound eyes reflected the emergency lights in ways that made his skin crawl. She clicked something short and sharp. The lead soldier lowered his rifle fractionally. Then the building shook again. Dust rained from the ceiling as another explosion thundered through the compound. The structural damage was getting worse. Whatever was left of this place would be rubble within minutes. The female soldier with the child moved back toward the Valkyrie defensive position. The lead soldier gestured with his rifle, a clear message. Follow. Jake was not sure if he was a prisoner or a guest or something in between, but standing here would accomplish nothing. He followed. The Valkyrie retreat was organized chaos. Civilians huddled in reinforced chambers while soldiers established firing positions. Jake saw more children, dozens of them, being herded into what looked like a hardened bunker. The diplomatic mission had brought families. He had not known that. Command had not mentioned that in the briefings. They passed through 3 security checkpoints, and at each one the guards stared at Jake with unreadable alien expressions. Some kept their weapons trained on him. Others seemed confused. One soldier reached out and touched Jake's arm, mandibles moving in what might have been a question. The lead soldier clicked sharply, and the curious one backed off. They entered a chamber that made Jake stop in his tracks. It was massive, the walls covered in the same bioluminescent fungus that seemed to grow everywhere in Valkyrie architecture. But at the center, on a raised platform surrounded by guards, stood a Valkyrie unlike any Jake had seen before. She was larger, her carapace a deep midnight blue shot through with silver. Her wings, fully extended, spanned at least 12 feet and shimmered with iridescent patterns. The Queen. Jake was standing in front of the Valkyrie Queen. Every guard in the room had a weapon pointed at him now. The Queen's antennae swept in his direction, and Jake felt the weight of her attention like a physical thing. The female soldier who had taken the child moved forward, still cradling the small Valkyrie protectively. She approached the platform and extended her arms. The Queen took the child with a gentleness that should not have surprised Jake, but did. She examined the small one thoroughly, antennae brushing over every inch. The child clicked and chirped, clearly telling a story, explaining what had happened. When the Queen looked at Jake again, something had changed. Her stance, the angle of her wings, the way her guards shifted nervously. She descended from the platform with deliberate steps, each one clicking against the stone floor. She moved within 3 feet of Jake, close enough that he could see his reflection in her compound eyes, fractured into 1,000 tiny images. She reached out one limb toward him. The guards tensed. Jake forced himself to stay still, to not flinch away. The Queen's claw touched his chest, right over his heart. She held it there for 3 seconds that felt like 3 years. Then she spoke, not in her own language, but in English. The accent was thick, the pronunciation imperfect, but understandable. You saved daughter mine. Debt exists. Life debt. You understand? Jake's mouth was too dry. He managed a nod. The Queen's mandibles moved in a way that might have been satisfaction. She withdrew her claw and turned, speaking rapid commands in her own language. The guards lowered their weapons, though they did not stop watching Jake. "Stay you here," the Queen said. "Safe you are. When escape possible, discuss we will payment." Payment. Like he had done some kind of transaction. But the way she said it, the weight behind the words, suggested something more. Something that made the guards look at each other with what Jake was starting to recognize as alarm. He had saved the Queen's daughter, and now he belonged to her. The evacuation happened faster than Jake expected. The Velkhari moved with military precision, collapsing their defensive positions in coordinated waves while maintaining cover fire. Jake found himself swept along in the middle of the formation, surrounded by soldiers who kept their weapons ready but pointed away from him. The Queen moved ahead with her daughter, 4 guards forming a living shield around them. They emerged into the compound courtyard just as human forces breached the eastern perimeter. Jake saw the familiar shapes of Earth defense armor, plasma rifles charging his people, but they were firing on the Velkhari column, and he was right in the middle of it. "Hold fire!" Jake shouted, waving his arms. "Friendly in the formation. Hold your fire." Plasma bolts seared past his head. Either they had not heard him over the combat noise, or they did not care. A Velkhari soldier next to Jake took a hit to the thorax and went down shrieking. Another soldier dragged the wounded one toward cover, returning fire with controlled bursts. The Queen turned, her massive form moving with impossible speed. She grabbed Jake with 2 of her limbs and pulled him behind a concrete barrier, just as the space where he had been standing erupted in superheated plasma. She clicked something sharp at her guards, and the defensive formation tightened around them. "Your people shoot you," she observed. The fact seemed to puzzle her more than the actual violence. "They do not know I am here," Jake said. His comm unit was still functional. He triggered it, hoping Captain Rodriguez was listening. "This is Lieutenant Morrison. I am embedded with the Velkhari Queen's Guard. Cease fire on the center formation. Repeat, cease fire." Static answered him for 3 seconds. Then Rodriguez's voice crackled through, disbelieving and furious. "Morrison, what the hell are you doing with the bugs?" "Saving the peace talk, sir. The attack was not from either side. Someone wanted to sabotage the negotiations. The Velkhari are not hostile. Tell that to the plasma burns on my people. They are defending themselves, sir. If we stop shooting, they will stop shooting." More explosions rocked the compound. Jake saw movement on the western wall. Not human armor, not Velkhari formations. Something else entirely. Bulky combat suits in matte black, moving with the coordination of professional mercenaries. They were firing on both human and Velkhari positions indiscriminately. "Third-party combatants on the west wall," Jake reported. "Someone hired mercenaries to hit the talks. We are all targets." The firing from the human positions slowed, then stopped. Rodriguez was many things, but he was not stupid. He could see the tactical situation shifting. The Queen's guards noticed the change immediately. Their return fire ceased within seconds, though their weapons stayed ready. "We need to move," Jake said to the Queen. "This position is not defensible. Too much open ground." She studied him with those compound eyes, antennae sweeping back and forth. Then she clicked orders to her soldiers. The formation shifted, moving toward the northern service entrance. Jake stayed close to the Queen, very aware that one wrong move from either side would restart the firefight. The mercenaries were not giving up. They advanced in professional fire teams, using smoke and suppression tactics. Jake caught a glimpse of their equipment and felt his blood run cold. Those were Nexus Corporation weapons, expensive and illegal in 12 systems. Someone with serious money wanted this peace conference destroyed. A plasma grenade landed 10 feet from the Queen's position. Jake moved without thinking, diving forward and batting it away with his rifle. It detonated in midair, the blast wave slamming him against the concrete. His armor took most of the impact, but his ribs screamed in protest. The Queen was beside him instantly, her limbs pulling him upright with surprising gentleness. "Foolish," she said. "You risk life for mine? Again." "That is the job," Jake managed. His chest felt like someone had hit him with a hammer. "No, not job. Choice. You choose protect. You choose save." Her antennae brushed across his helmet, an oddly intimate gesture. "Valkyrie, no difference. You are not like others." They reached the service entrance just as Captain Rodriguez's squad arrived from the opposite direction. The captain took one look at the situation, Jake standing next to the alien queen, both sides holding fire, and made a decision Jake would probably owe him drinks for later. "Consolidated defensive position," Rodriguez ordered. "Human and Valkyrie forces combined perimeter. We hold this entrance until evac arrives." The next 10 minutes were chaos of a different kind. Human soldiers taking positions alongside Valkyrie guards, both groups eyeing each other with suspicion but focusing fire on the mercenaries. Jake found himself coordinating with the Queen's tactical officer, a scarred veteran with a missing antenna who seemed to understand English better than most. They held the entrance. Barely. By the time the evacuation ships arrived, both Earth Defense and Valkyrie command vessels, the mercenary force had been driven back. Jake watched as wounded from both sides were loaded onto medical transports, human medics working alongside Valkyrie healers with barely a hesitation. The Queen approached him as her ship descended. Her daughter clung to her back, the small one's wings already healing from the earlier burns. "Come," the Queen said. "It was not a request. Ma'am, I have to report back to my command." "No, life debt not paid. You saved daughter. You saved me. You stay with me until dead honored. This is law. This is Valkyrie way." Jake looked at Captain Rodriguez, who just shrugged. "Above my pay grade, Morrison. Sounds like a diplomatic matter now. Command will want to debrief you anyway. Might as well go with her." The Queen extended one limb toward him, waiting. Her daughter chirped something that might have been encouragement. Jake took the offered limb. The Queen's ship swallowed them both. The Valkyrie command ship was nothing like human vessels. The corridors curved in ways that defied Euclidean geometry, walls covered in the bioluminescent fungus that seemed to be part of their architecture and lighting system combined. Jake followed the Queen through passages that were clearly designed for beings that could walk on walls and ceilings as easily as floors. Several times she had to pause and wait for him to navigate sections meant for climbing. They entered a chamber that could only be described as throne room. The ceiling stretched up at least 50 feet, supported by organic pillars that looked grown rather than built. Valkyrie of obvious importance waited in a semicircle, their carapaces marked with rank insignia Jake did not recognize. The daughter was taken away by attendants, though she looked back at Jake several times before disappearing through a side passage. The Queen took her position at the center of the chamber, and Jake suddenly felt very small and very alone. The assembled Valkyrie were all staring at him, some with curiosity, others with what he suspected was hostility. One older male with battle scars across his thorax clicked something harsh and pointed a claw at Jake. The Queen's response was sharp enough to make several of the assembly flinch. She gestured for Jake to approach, and he did, very aware that he was the only human on a ship full of species that had been at war with his people for over a decade. This one saved Princess Kira from death, the Queen announced in English, clearly for his benefit. Life debt initiated. By ancient law, he becomes part of royal household until debt satisfied. The scarred male clicked rapidly, his tone argumentative. The Queen's antennae flattened against her head, a gesture Jake had learned meant displeasure or anger. The back and forth went on for several minutes, entirely in the Velkari language. Jake caught his name mentioned several times, and the word for human that sounded like breaking glass. Finally, the Queen raised one limb and silence fell immediately. She spoke in English again, turning to face Jake directly. Council argues debt payment. Some say give you rewards, send you back. Others say keep you prisoner for war crimes against our people. I say different. Jake's throat was very dry. What do you say? You showed courage. You showed compassion. You risked life twice for Velkari you owe nothing. This is rare. This is valuable. She moved closer, her massive form towering over him. You stay, not prisoner, not guest. You become mine. The word sent a ripple through the assembly. Several Velkari began clicking at once, some in apparent outrage, others in what might have been shock. The Queen silenced them with a gesture. You do not understand, Jake said carefully. I am a soldier. I have responsibilities to my people. Yes. Soldier. Warrior. This I see. This I value. The Queen's claw touched his chest again, that same deliberate gesture from before. Among Velkari, strong warriors serve Queen directly, bound by honor, by choice, by loyalty earned, not demanded. I offer this. You become sworn guard. You protect Princess, as you already have. You stand at my side, as trusted advisor. You want me to swear loyalty to you? To your people? While my people are still at war with yours? War ends soon. Peace talks continue. Attack today proves both sides have enemies who want conflict. We work together or we die separately. Her antennae swept across his face. You showed way forward, human and Velkari fighting side by side. You proved it possible. Jake's mind raced. This was insane. This was career suicide. Command would label him a traitor or a collaborator at minimum. But the Queen was not wrong. The mercenaries had targeted both sides equally. Someone powerful wanted the war to continue, and they had the resources to make sure it did. If I agree, what happens to me when the debt is paid? When I have served whatever term you decide? Debt of this magnitude never fully paid. Life for life, protection for protection. But if you choose leave, you may. After 1 year's service, you free to go. This I promise before council, before ancestors, before all of Velkari honor. 1 year. 1 year. Serving an alien queen while his people tried to negotiate peace with a species they barely understood. 1 year is a bridge between two civilizations that had been killing each other since first contact. The diplomatic corps would probably love it. Command would probably hate it. Jake would probably end up dead in some political assassination plot before the year was out. The Queen's daughter appeared from the side passage, moving past the attendants trying to hold her back. She climbed up the Queen's body with practiced ease and perched on her back, clicking something at Jake. The Queen's mandibles moved in what he was learning to recognize as affection. Kira says, "You are brave," says you smell strange but kind, says she wants you to stay. The Queen's voice was softer now, less formal. I am Queen. I make demands, I give orders. But this is request. Will you stay? Jake thought about Captain Rodriguez coordinating with Velkari tactical officers. Thought about human and Velkhari soldiers fighting side by side against a common enemy. Thought about how every war in history ended the same way, with someone brave enough or stupid enough to extend a hand to the enemy. He straightened to attention, the movement automatic after years of military service. On one condition: you give me direct communication access to Earth Defense Command. I will not be cut off from my people. I report to them regularly. Full transparency. The Queen considered this. Agreed. You serve me, but you remain loyal to yours. Bridge between peoples. Both and neither. She extended her limb. Do you accept? Jake took her claw in his hand. The assembly clicked and chittered, some in approval, most in disbelief. I accept. The Queen's grip tightened. Then you are mine, Jake Morrison, and I am yours. This is sworn. The first 3 months were brutal. Jake learned to read Velkhari body language, to distinguish between 17 different clicking patterns that all meant variations of danger, to navigate corridors designed for beings with 6 limbs and wings. He trained with the Queen's Guard, sparring matches that left him bruised and humbled. The Velkhari fought with speed and precision that human reflexes could barely match. But humans had advantages too. Endurance, adaptability, the ability to keep fighting long after logic said to quit. Jake taught the guards human tactics, showed them how to use terrain that seemed worthless to flying species, demonstrated weapons techniques that worked without wings or compound eyes. Slowly, grudgingly, they began to respect him. Princess Kira adopted him as a personal guardian, much to the horror of her official attendants. She followed him everywhere, chattering in broken English about Velkhari culture, asking endless questions about humans. She wanted to know why humans only had 2 eyes, how they could see in so few directions, why they needed to sleep so much. Jake found himself explaining humanity to a child who had every reason to hate him, and instead saw him as an endless source of fascination. The Queen watched it all with unreadable patience. She summoned Jake to her private chambers regularly, asking about human psychology, tactics, politics. She was preparing for the renewed peace talks, and she was determined to make them succeed. Jake provided insight that no Velkhari advisor could, explaining why human negotiators would react certain ways, what cultural touchstones mattered, where compromise was possible and where it was not. On his 4th month, everything changed. Intelligence came through both human and Velkhari channels simultaneously. The mercenaries who had attacked the first peace conference were not independent operators. They were funded by the Corvan Directorate, a third alien species that had been playing both sides against each other for years. While humans and Velkhari had been destroying each other, the Corvans had been quietly expanding into systems both species claimed, taking advantage of the distraction. The discovery should have united Earth and Velkhari command immediately. It did not. Old hatreds ran too deep. Human admirals demanded proof. Velkhari generals questioned the intelligence. Both sides prepared for war with the Corvans while still maintaining defensive positions against each other. The cycle of violence threatened to widen rather than break. Jake sat in the Queen's chamber while she received reports from her scouts. Corvan ships were massing at the border systems. They knew the deception had been discovered and were preparing to strike before the alliance could form. The window was closing. We need a joint operation, Jake said. Something that proves humans and Velkhari can work together. Something impossible to ignore or deny. The Queen's antennae swept toward him. What do you suggest? The Corvan Command Station at Delta 7. It is their primary coordination hub for this sector. Both human and Velkhari intelligence have been trying to crack it for years. What if we hit it together? The scarred counselor who had opposed Jake's appointment clicked in obvious disdain. Impossible. The station is too heavily defended.
It would take combined fleet action, and humans would never commit ships alongside ours. What if we do not need the fleets? Jake pulled up the tactical display, highlighting the station's position.
Special Forces Operation. Small team. Mixed human and Velkari. We go in fast. Disable the station's command systems, extract intelligence proving the Corvin manipulation, and get out. Success proves cooperation works. Failure is limited to one small team, rather than entire fleets. The Queen studied the display. You volunteer for this? Yes, and I know human special forces who would volunteer too. Captain Rodriguez and his team, they fought alongside your guards during the evacuation. They know it can work. You risk death. Life debt not yet paid. Jake smiled. Maybe this is how I pay it, by risking my life so your people and mine can stop killing each other. The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then she clicked orders to her attendants. I contact Human Command. We propose joint operation. If they agree, you lead Velkari team. Captain Rodriguez leads Human team. You coordinate. The operation got approved 27 hours later. Jake suspected the Queen and Human Command had been looking for an excuse to cooperate, and this gave them one that both sides could accept. He met with Rodriguez in a neutral station, and they planned the assault over bad coffee and worse Velkari fungus tea. The raid went wrong from the start. Corvin defenses were heavier than intelligence suggested. The team took casualties immediately. 2 Velkari guards down, 1 human trooper critically wounded. Jake and Rodriguez pulled the teams together, using combined tactics to push through the station's outer shell. Human breaching charges opened paths the Velkari could exploit with their speed. Velkari plasma weapons suppressed defenders while humans advanced through choke points. They reached the command core with half the team wounded and ammunition running low. Jake set the extraction charges while Rodriguez and the Velkari officer held the corridor. The intelligence data was better than anyone had hoped. Complete records of Corvin operations, including communications with extremist factions on both Earth and Velkari worlds, proof that could not be denied or ignored. The extraction was a running firefight through 3 decks of the station. Jake carried a wounded Velkari guard while Rodriguez covered their retreat. They made it to the shuttle with seconds to spare, the station's core detonating behind them as they cleared the blast radius. Back aboard the Queen's flagship, Jake watched as the intelligence spread through both commands. Within hours, joint task forces were forming. Human and Velkari ships moving together toward Corvin positions. The alliance was not perfect and trust would take years to build, but it was happening. The Queen found him in the observation bay, watching the fleet maneuvers. Princess Kira clung to his shoulder, chattering about the pretty ships. Debt paid, the Queen said quietly. You free to go if you wish. Jake looked at the mixed fleet, at the princess on his shoulder, at the Queen who had demanded he be hers and somehow made it mean something more than possession. He thought about the year ahead, the fragile peace that needed protecting, the bridge between species that still needed building. I think I will stay a while longer, he said, if the offer still stands. The Queen's antennae brushed across his face, in what he had learned was a gesture of deep affection. Offer stands. You are mine. I am yours. This is sworn. Princess Kira chirped agreement, and Jake laughed. Somehow, impossibly, he had found a place between 2 worlds, and he was going to fight to keep it.